You see the commercial where they go, the talking cost of the business, and they go, well, how much is all this stuff here cost? You ever seen that? That's an old movie. You're trying to think about where they can save money, and they had piles and piles of papers on the desk and all these computerized reports and stuff talking about it. How much do we spend on this? Spend $25,000, but you don't realize how you spend $18,000. Yeah.
Sometimes that is a very, very dangerous.
Hi.
I didn't give you the.
We're good with it? We're good. All right.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sit down. We'll go upstairs and stand back up.
That's my neck of time.
All right. Call meeting to order. First up is the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so this is again another special meeting with the primary purpose of working on the budget. We're skipping through some things that we normally have and getting right to first thing on the agenda would be the superintendent's report. So people hear me back there, I didn't pick up the microphone. Okay, special meeting, so we are dispensing with approval minutes and other such things and getting right to the items on the agenda we do have. And the first item up is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, and there will be a public comment section this evening. I don't know if that's, if some of you are here to do that or not, but that will be here this evening. So I suspect a lot of you are here not to hear about the budget tonight, but to hear about the masking. So, as you know, with the previous announcement on Wednesday, March 2nd, the Maine Department of Health and Human Services and the Maine Department of Education advised Maine school units and child care providers that effective March 9th, which is this Wednesday, universal masking is no longer a statewide recommendation in these settings, but it is now optional. The Winslow Board, along with the majority of public schools, boards across the state have followed the Maine CDC guidelines for the past 2 years in order to keep students and staff safe and in school for in-person learning. With the board's approval of this most recent guidance by the medical professionals, the Winslow School Department would move to a mask optional status on Wednesday, March 9th. That would include transportation as well. That means tomorrow will be the last day where we would have masks as a universal masking. It's important to say this because the Maine CDC is quick to remind us that the end of a mask mandate doesn't mean that it's the end of COVID. To that end, schools are expected to continue following the document we have used to guide our decisions, which is called the Standard Operating Procedure, which is the SOP, which you'll find online. There is new guidance coming out to the SOP. It's expected to be released in the next few days. We thought it was coming today. The administrative team met. We didn't see it. It didn't come out. So as soon as it comes out, we will review it. And after we've reviewed it, we'll provide information to families, students, as to what the changes are, if any. We should also add that the CDC will continue to monitor COVID cases in the state. and they may provide additional guidance if things should change. Probably an understatement for all of us to say that this is exciting news. We've all been looking forward to the day when masks would become optional or we could do something different. Having said that, and this is really important, because those of you who are here tonight, and those of you who are listening online, this is crucial. Masks will become optional for the vast majority of students and staff starting Wednesday. But unfortunately, they may not become optional for everyone, because some students or some staff members may have health complications that prevents them from removing their mask for a period of time. Or they may care for an elderly family member in their home who can ill afford to catch COVID from them. Many students and staff may simply feel comfortable choosing to continue wearing a mask for a while. That's all okay. And that's what I need your help with. I'm asking for help. For those of you in the audience this evening, from those of you who are watching from the comfort of your home, if you haven't already done so, please take the time to have a conversation with your children tomorrow about the importance of respecting everyone's decision to either wear a mask or not. This community has always been known for coming together. We help one another through difficult times. I can think of several things that have happened in the last few years where this community has come together. I can't think of a better time right now to come together and to be respectful of one another for the choice individuals will make as it pertains to mask wearing. At that point, I'll open it up to the boards if you have any questions. Mr. Fair.
Maybe you don't have the answer to this question yet, but do you know yet, or do you expect into the new guidance that we might be able to have parent-teacher interaction in person in the schools?
I suspect that new guidance is going to ask us to kind of go in slowly, just like we've done with everything else, just kind of ease into things. I'll give you an example of that new guidance. So one of the things that's not going to go away is, let's say, quarantine and isolation. So if you're a student here and you got COVID this Sunday, and you said, I've got COVID, the SOP still says you need to quarantine, so you're still 5 days out of school. So then on day 6, if you're feeling okay, the SOP still says you've got to wear a mask for 5 days if you want to come back, or you stay up for 10 days. That's probably not going to change. We're waiting to see, but that's an example of what might not change. But if you don't have COVID, you're okay. You don't need to wear a mask if you choose not to. Any other questions that you might be able to answer? I know this isn't I'm not supposed to do this because this isn't a meeting where we have public discussion, but if somebody had a quick question, I'd be very welcome to answer it if you have that. No? Okay, thank you. So at this point, you as the board need to consider the motion to accept the most recent changes to the main CDC guidance, making mask optional starting Wednesday, March 9th. If you make that motion and you approve that, then that's what will take place.
Are you ready to do that?
Hang on a second. That, we have public comments, and then we have that under old business.
Oh,
So we're not at that point in the agenda yet. I don't know if everybody could hear me, that's or not. The next thing up is actually public comments, and then we will have that as our first item under old business, and then we'll proceed to act upon that motion. So, that being said, next item up is public comment. Again, I have an introduction to the public comment period for those who aren't familiar with the process. So bear with me if I read through this. Okay. School boards are elected to govern their schools. Our meetings are for the board to conduct the required business of the school district. By law, this business is conducted in view of the public. While these meetings are in the public, they are not public meetings, as a legislative session is not a public meeting. They are in the public, but are not intended to be an interactive question-answer public meeting. The law requires us to provide a public comment period during our meetings. The public comment period is your opportunity to express your views within the guidelines of our policy. It is not an open discussion period. Accordingly, do not expect the board to respond to your questions or concerns tonight. While a simple question that is raised in the public comment period may be answered at the discretion of the chair, for a more thoughtful and thorough response, we suggest that questions be emailed to the appropriate building administrator first, then the superintendent, and then board members if you'd like to pursue it further. Please keep in mind that a response may take a few days due to other requirements of the day, or to allow time to gather the information requested. I also want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you choose. In order that we may hear from the largest number of different voices and have time to conduct our regular business, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes for comments. At the outset, please, after being recognized by the chair, we ask that speakers identify their name and town of residence. Please try to be brief and try not to repeat yourself. Please direct your comments to the board. The board will not permit complaints or allegations against staff members or particular students. These are matters which the board is not permitted to hear in public. If there are complaints against staff or students, these are handled appropriately through established policies and procedures. We know discussions of school-related issues can get emotional, but please remember our children are watching and we are neighbors, so please be civil. We will not permit profanity or shouting at one another or comments that disparage or attack individuals or groups of individuals. Thank you for your patience during this introduction. We have hope and confidence that your participation will be helpful and constructive to the board. So with that, I'll open public comments for anyone who would like to speak. And I guess we have our first person, and if you just go to the lectern and introduce yourself.
My name. My name is Jennifer Nolan. I'm a local primary care provider. Additionally, I have 5 children in the district. I'm additionally a board member for the Maine Educational Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Governor Baptist School for the Deaf, which governs the deaf school services. As a provider, I want to say that clinically we know that we have plenty of things that we can do for ourselves. We have vaccination, we have different ranges of masks that provide different levels of protection, and they do protect ourselves if we wear them, and that there's a lot of great options for those that are vulnerable in our community. And I say that because I serve primarily internal medicine, but I've practiced palliative care and hospice and a lot of geriatric work. So I've spent the last decade serving this community in that age population. Our kids aren't the ones that are high risk. We're not protecting them, we're protecting our normal people that we live with, our grandmother, whoever that is that's connected or maybe serviced. The trouble is that at home, I have 5 kids that are struggling in so many different ways. And not even just that, I have 3 deaf and hard of hearing children that are serviced in the district. I do want to side note that the district has been phenomenal at meeting their needs and exceeding their needs. I do have to put that out there to the board. I get comments from the deaf service folk often about how above and beyond every single person is with my kids. And the work that they did to bring one of my deaf kids from the deaf school into the community. But those kids, they struggle with social skills, right? They can't hear chunks of what you're saying. Anywhere from 50 to 90% of what's being said is coming in, and they can't catch the learning that happens of the student over here getting in trouble. They can't hear the commentary here. So these kids already have issues with understanding the full communication that's coming, or message that's coming to them. They use every aspect of your body, the situation as a way to get the message. And masking has created an additional barrier for them to be able to access. And I say this, when you don't have your mouth, the eyes don't always say anything, and sometimes I think you're being funny, but you're not really being funny, you're being serious, and there's a lot of things going on that have created issues for those kids. So it ciphers their ability to gain that information. These kids also have a hard time holding conversation with their peers, which are not great communicators. So it's different when you have an adult that can piece those things together of things that you're missing, but when you have a kid, they don't get it. You're talking about a completely different subject. I was talking about this. And so here we are having difficulty with connecting with peers because of this. And that isolation that you already feel, I'm the only kid, I'm the only deaf kid, I'm the only person in this area, that isolation just grows. And so the mental health that has occurred, that has been compounded by not being in school, the masking, restrictions on being with friends that may be in other cohorts, has certainly played a role. So, from my standpoint, I'm supporting the option for masks, just as a way to help my children's well-being and communication access. I do want to ask that, I have two daughters that want to speak, one of which is using an American Sign Language interpreter on the tablet. So one, if you're talking, please talk into the mic, because that's the only way the interpreter can hear it from Falmouth. And if she could just come up next, for those who want to talk, so that I don't lose time, because I couldn't find a second interpreter to go past an hour. Just in case we have to go that long. Thank you very much. You want me to go next? Okay. Yes, I'll go. Give us your name.
I'm Emily Dolan, and masks are way too hard for me and my family, and other families too. With my glasses, it makes it harder. My glasses always fog up, and it makes it so hard to see. But without the mask, that never happens. Masks are so annoying. When I can't see my friends, it's even harder. And it's so hard to hear people, and especially from my sister and little brother, because they are hard of hearing. And it's also hard to hear because you can't read their lips with the mask on their face. Masks also make it hard to have a conversation. Like, it makes my voice and other people's voices really quiet, making it hard for others to understand what I'm saying.
Good job.
Very good job.
That's fine. That's fine.
Masks. My name is Kaylee Stars, and masks are really annoying. Whenever I have a conversation with someone, they always are saying, "Oh, we're not talking about that." It's usually like a whole another conversation that I'm saying, and I only get half of what I learn or get in a sentence or something, but
Doing great. It's okay, they're not gonna bite. You're doing a great job. You're fine, it's okay.
and also in my education, I think masks would be a really good improvement. And I've had to go up on my pills. I would have to go see my therapist more because of the masks. And
It's tough.
it's just tough.
Yeah, good job.
Get my stopwatch out, because when I was here on February 28th, I said 3 minutes, and I went like 3 minutes and 31 seconds and 0.6, so, and I appreciate the board for letting me go over, I do appreciate it. My name is Chris Susi, I'm from Winslow. I wasn't gonna come tonight, these are my sketch notes that I wrote at a stoplight on the way over here. I've been very active online, social media, what's happening Winslow page, for trying to get these masks off for over a year. You know, I've been ridiculed, people have called me names, whatever, you know, you just had living proof of what I've been advocating for, and I've been cracked on, which is fine, but, I'll try to piece together I'm gonna be all over the place, because I'm kind of like adult ADHD, but, so, yeah, that was my first note. Warning, I'll be all over the place. So, masks. All these thoughts will be strung together. They weren't prepared in the speech. What took the town so long to get to this point, to take the masks off? When Oakland took them off and took them off the buses, and here we are, we're still here. Dirigo means I lead, you know, we lead, which actually brought me to another thought, the post office. You don't have to be first, but you don't have to be last. You just be somewhere in between, and that's good enough. Well, Dirigo is, you know, we lead. You certainly had the information in front of you to be able to take these masks off a long time ago. You kept saying we're referring to a CDC, we're referring to this. You know, if this is important to you, call this number. And then after I wasted tons of time that I could have spent with my family and loved ones researching all this, I found out you had the ability to make the decision at the district level all along, and you chose not to, because you were protecting us. I'm not gonna negate that. I mean, you were protecting what you thought was the whole. But clearly there's children like the Galens, clearly there's children like mine. I signed my kid up for school. He was so excited to go to kindergarten, and 2 days before he was getting ready to sign up, I pulled him out. I actually met Mr. Price in the office. I was so excited to sign him up, and I pulled him. He has speech issues. He just doesn't do well with masks. I'm gonna have to fly through this, and I'm only at 30 seconds left. Oh boy. this is on a different topic, but the budget. I was here at the meeting last night and when you guys talked about the interest on the budget, almost $300,000 a year. Like, I know we voted on it as a public, but if the public knew it was 300 grand a year, they probably would have thought otherwise. My daughter was 8 years old when I adopted her from Ethiopia. She grew up in a straw hut. She wanted to go to school so badly. She would walk through foot-high water to get to school. I think often as educators and parents, we think we know what we're doing, what's best for the kids. Kids want to come to school. These masks are crap, seriously. And I really think that you thought you were doing the right thing. I've got another page and a half. I'm not going to get through it, but I think Galen said it best. There's probably a bunch of other, even my mother would yield me like 2 more minutes. She's in the crowd. She'd probably get up to speak. Would you mind if she yielded me like another 60 seconds? Would that be okay with you?
60 seconds.
Thank you. So I sit on several boards in the community. I'm not going to name them because, it doesn't matter. But when you sit on a board, you have the best interest of the people you represent on the board. And there's no doubt in my mind that each one of you sit on this board because you have the best interest of children on your minds. And I want to apologize if any social media thing came across the wrong way while I was trying to personally attack any one of you, but I just, I hope you accept my apology, but at the same time, I hope you take it as a token of respect of how much this means to me. I have a 5-year-old at home who wants to go to school. He wants to be with other kids. He deserves that. I pay taxes. And, you've probably already made up your mind which way you're going to vote tonight, regardless of how we all speak. But because we're all here, it shows you how serious this is to us. Thank you.
Oh, here you go. I'm leaving. I'm not leaving. I gotta go.
Somebody's gonna need to give me a time signal because I don't know when 2 minutes is up here. My name is Peggy Susie. I have 3 grandchildren currently in the Winslow elementary school system, and I have 1 that we're trying to get into the school system. I have to tell you a little bit about me. I'm a former teacher. I'm currently a social worker, have my own business, and I work with elderly people, some who are deaf and can't hear, who need to read lips in order to understand what someone's telling them, or have the other person write it down. So I deal with the other end of the spectrum at this point. But because I'm now in healthcare and I was a former teacher, I understand all aspects of this, all of it. I've also followed what's going on in our local school systems. I've also followed what's going on statewide. I think we're far enough into this now that we should allow parents the freedom to decide what is best for their child. But I also support the right of parents who feel that their child needs to wear a mask because of any specific medical issue that they may have, or just because of preference. So I think people are just looking for freedom of choice. I also remember when I was teaching that our very young learn by being able to see the teacher's mouth, see how the words are formed, hear phonetically how the word and the sound comes out. This is a hindrance to that, and it's concerned me for a long time that we're putting all of these kids way behind in a world where it's going to be hard for them to catch up.
Do we have anybody else for public comments? Okay.
My name is Ashley Whitman, and I came last week and was too chicken to speak, so I guess I will ask with my living to have the guts to do it. I was born and raised in Winslow. I graduated in 2007, and 3.5 years ago, I met my fiance, who was from Skowhegan, and we each have 3 children, so we had to sit down and discuss where we wanted to move to, where our children were going to grow up. And it was actually a very short discussion, because later that week, we went to the family bingo night that the elementary school used to hold, and we brought all 6 kids with us, and even though 3 of them had went to Madison, all the staff there, all the kids there loved them, and made them feel part of the community. So, long story short, we now have 5 boys in the Winslow school system, ranging from 9 to 13. Yes, it costs an arm and a leg to feed them. And our daughter, who is 4, is supposed to start kindergarten this year, which is really tough for me, especially when I have to push off my 30-pound, 4-year-old baby to staff members and teachers that I don't get to meet face to face. I'm also an educator. I am a Title I teacher. I teach Title I math over at the Georgia Mitchell School. So I see how hard it is on these kids in person. I've been on both sides of it. I don't get paid enough to be a math police. No teachers get paid enough to be a math police. It's not fun to sit with a 5-year-old and say, you can't go play with your friends because you're in math, so it doesn't cover your nose. I've had a really hard time with dealing with the restrictions, especially with my special needs son. When we started school back last year, he came 50% of the time. I sent him with a note from his occupational therapist and his psychiatrist stating that masks were going to be too hard for him. He has severe issues with things covering his face. We worked for 2 years with his occupational therapist he likes to chew on his clothing. So we had a chewy gummy thing that he would wear on his neck, even in school. And for 2 years we worked on it, and the goal was completed. And then COVID happened. He now has to wear a mask. We're back to square one. He chews holes through his mask. He chews holes through his clothing when he's at home. He's not allowed to use his gummy thing in school because he has to have a mask on all the time, and a face shield, even with a psychiatrist's note, isn't enough. Just so the psychiatrists have to go to medical school before they go to pass medications for psychiatric needs. So I don't understand why that wasn't enough for him. So it's just too much. I also have 2 sons with asthma. One of them is a all-season athlete. He does karate or swim all year round. He does baseball. He does football. He's currently on the wrestling team. His asthma is controlled really well with his inhaler up until this year. He now has to wear a mask while he's wrestling. So he has the mask on. He has the headgear on. His coach actually had to pull him off the mat yesterday at a youth meet because he couldn't breathe and he was screaming and couldn't get the headgear off in time enough to get his inhaler. And it was rough. So as a mom, it was scared. And if he didn't have to have a mask on, he would have been able to control his breathing. He would have been able to say, I need a timeout, I need a medical plate, I need to take my inhaler. But because of the mask, the ref couldn't hear him, the kid wrestling couldn't hear him. And he struggled the rest of the day with his asthma because of that. I think that's about it. You guys know, I'm sure you have kids in the school district. But it's hard. And as a teacher, I have noticed without these kids being in school the last year and a half, we have so many behavior needs that have to be met that we can't meet because we're being asked, please. Nobody wants to work in the school district because we can't hire people, we have no subs. It's just, no one wants to work because they have to be vaccinated and they have to wear a mask and nobody wants to anymore. They're just over it. And I think it would open up more opportunities for people to join the field of education that we need if the mask mandates were lifted also.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good evening, Chair, thank you for the time to speak tonight. Good evening, my name is Steve Susi, Winslow resident and taxpayer. My wife and I moved to Winslow in 2001. We have 3 sons, 2 of which graduated from Winslow school system. Jake and Austin now both wear the uniform and serve their country and state. Jake is in Europe currently. Austin serves while also attending Maine Maritime Academy. Our youngest is Sean, and he's currently a freshman. I too served, retiring with 22 years of service. Throughout my tenure, I've had the opportunity to develop simple and very complex standard operating procedures. After retirement, I worked for some time as the state training and exercise officer for the Maine Emergency Management Agency. During 2020, I served as a lead planner for the state's 2 alternate care sites, working for Maine Med and Northern Lights CEOs, hospital attorneys, and operations teams. And I say all of this because I understand SOPs. I understand that they're a living, breathing, dynamic document that are adjusted to fit the fluidity of the battlefield, in this case, the primary goal of keeping students and staff healthy and in the classrooms. The Maine DOE SOP is the baseline or minimum, and schools may develop additional procedures and expectations, and we get that. We're reminded of this at nearly every school board meeting. Unfortunately, the board has failed to also mention that the SOP is utilized as a condition for districts to receive federal funding ESSER III ARP funds. By accepting and taking these funds, we have willingly and freely enslaved our children to these conditions. As far as masks are concerned, there was a time when it was plausible justification and adhering to the recommendations by health experts, and it was warranted. That was back in 2020, at the height of the pandemic. We've come a long way since then. We continue to focus on case counts and numbers rather than choice of masks and quality of masks. In speaking with elementary educators, I discovered that kids often wearing cloth masks, which have been determined to be ineffective, and kids in lower grades chew on their masks, and by midday they're soaked with sputum, rendering the masks virtually useless, and now really just an article of clothing which conceals a kid's expression. Not to mention, they just don't wear the mask properly at times because, well, they're kids and that's just what they do. And then many leave the elementary school and travel to the Alphon Youth Center, which is now a maskless youth facility. For the other kids, they walk out the front door, such as the high school, high five, hug and kiss their boyfriends and girlfriends, take selfies, and just enjoy life as they should, while 6 feet prior, they had to wear the mask for 6 to 7 hours. But let's follow the science. On March 3rd, Maine DOE and Maine CDC announced that effective March 9th, Maine will no longer recommend that schools and daycare centers require masks, many opting to pivot to optional masking immediately. I'm not sure why this board decided not to do that. However, now that Maine DOE CDC no longer recommends universal masking in school settings, is it even legal for school boards to keep these restrictions in place? I say that with one more week, one more day, one more minute. At this point, to me, it seems like it's not about science and more about control and funding. Mr. Chair, thank you for your time.
Hello, Mitchell Walston. I teach 7th grade science at the junior high. I just first wanted to say that this is my first year teaching in the Winslow district, and it's been a really wonderful year. I just wanted to do a quick shout out. My administrators are incredibly supportive. Mr. Briggs and Mr. Carlo, they are really fantastic, and we're very lucky to have them at the junior high. Michelle Lake, curriculum instruction specialist, and my mentor personally, a wonderful asset. It really has been a near perfect year. But I do want to say that it could have been even more perfect if we didn't have these masks on all year. I think we're about 2 years overdue for this optional masking, unfortunately. So I'm very excited for Wednesday. I'm very excited to see my students' faces fully and interact with them in that way, and for them to see my face as well. So that's really all I want to say. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay, all right, well, thank you all for your comments. And hearing that, we'll now move on to the big topic of today that everybody's here for, apparently.
I'd like to make a motion.
Well, I guess we're at that point. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to move that we follow the main CDC recommendation to discontinue the mask mandate, making masks optional beginning March 9th.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second from Hillary. Okay, is there any discussion?
I will vote in favor of the motion, but I want to bring us back briefly to part of what the superintendent mentioned in his comments, which is the importance of respecting all of the choices, because although for the majority, masks have been annoying, at least isolating for many, and for some have contributed to mental health challenges. There are others for whom masks have been liberating. Those who are immunocompromised or even medically fragile may not have been able to attend school at all without masks. And they have been a very quiet minority, but they are as near and dear to our hearts as is anyone else. So I will support the motion, but I want to remind people that decisions have both intended and unintended consequences. Nobody intended, even the CDC, didn't intend for masks to be uncomfortable. They simply felt that they were warranted. We made the decision to, I guess in part, make our own lives easier, but also to provide greater clarity to the public. At least that's what I was thinking. I shouldn't speak for everyone. By choosing an information source, and you going to one information source over the scope of the pandemic, an information source that was well-informed. So the CDC was chosen, and we have followed, I think without any variation, their recommendations. That's why I think we did that. I certainly didn't even know there were monies that could be available at the time we made that decision, because there weren't. We certainly didn't make them because we were only interested in the elderly, because it is simply inaccurate that this epidemic has only affected the elderly. All you have to do is look at our case counts. All you have to do is look at the numbers of children and youth. This has been the second highest cause of mortality for youth, has been the pandemic. So it has had impacts on children, and we cannot forget that. So once again, I will vote in favor of the motion. I urge everyone to understand that if somebody makes a different choice than we do, then we will please respect it and not even bother to ask questions. It's really none of our concern if someone chooses to wear a mask, or if they choose to wear a different color shirt, whatever. It's not our concern. Please don't harass or even ask anyone about their choice, if the board votes this way. I think there have been some assumptions about our vote. I'm going to vote in favor of the motion, but at this point, it's still a motion. And the motion could pass, it might not pass, we'll see. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments from the board? Okay, I guess the only thing that I will add is, just want to make sure everybody realizes that this has not been fun for anybody on either side of this topic. Surely the administration, the board have not done this lightly, and it surely has not been easy all the way through. But we did what we did, and we thought it was the right thing to do at the time, and we will continue to do what we think is best, as best we can. And that's all we can do. So that's all I got. Thank you all, and I guess we have a motion, we have a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion? The motion is unanimous, and the motion passes. So with that, thank you for coming. We're going to move on to some new business and budget discussions. So if you're not excited about listening to that, if you'd like to leave, feel free. You won't offend us in the bed. And leave. Thank you.
Girls, great job.
Good job.
Yeah, good job.
Good test. Good job.
Okay, so we're on to new business. So we're doing the first draft budget presentations, and first one up is special education, and that would be Jennifer Day.
That was very good.
Can you hear me now?
I would, yeah.
Okay, good evening. I will be sharing with you the special services budget for the school year 2022-23. Before I begin reviewing some of the lines, I would like to explain a few things about this budget. It is complicated, as special education can be complicated and involve many factors. The district has an obligation to address needs individually and with no reference to cost to ensure students are able to make adequate academic progress. You will notice in this budget there are some lines with dramatic increases and some lines with dramatic decreases. Most of these lines will be around staff salaries and benefits. Due to the varying needs of the students and movement of students in and out of the district, staff have moved in budget lines. For example, an Edtech began the year at the elementary school supporting the resource room setting, and based on need was moved to the self-contained setting. This has caused a shift in the budget line amounts. We've also managed the school year with vacant positions, as there have been a lack of applicants to fill these. This will show itself significantly in the benefits lines, as with all vacant positions, the highest level of benefits is budgeted, as it is unknown what the new employee would choose. I'm going to have Michelle share a document. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that very well. But as I had mentioned earlier, the district has a variety of needs, and I would like to share a little information about special services in Winslow. Each year in October, all public schools must report how many students with special needs they are serving. This is known as the October Child Count. This chart shows the Winslow's child count since 2009. And as you can see, which I don't think you can, there is a fluctuation between years, but there's a general increase trend. And this school year having 226. Next.
And it might be important, 226 out of 1,100 students or so.
1,100. This slide shows there are several categories for which students can qualify for special services. Winslow has the following numbers in each category. We've seen a slight increase in emotional disturbance, specific learning disability, and speech and language impairment. Speech and language has gone up by 13 students. Each of the 3 schools has a variety of classrooms offering specialized programming. These programs offer autism programs, life skills, day treatment, and resource rooms at all levels. Our amazing team of teachers and specialists look closely at evaluation reports and specialist recommendations to support students through services such as speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, board-certified behavior analyst, American Sign Language interpreters, teacher of the deaf, psychological evaluator, social worker, and clinical director of social work. Next slide. This is a little bit about the way that I reviewed this with you last year, overall priorities and themes that you will hear consistently through the lines in the budget. Are data collection from grades K through 12 through the use of a universal assessment to collect data points 3 times a year. This is intended to track progress and evaluate effectiveness of programming. That was chosen this year and is in the process of developing, and that was our iReady assessment we did. The district did iReady Math, and special services did iReady Reading as well. We have focused on training of teachers on research-based reading and math programs that target students' unique lagging skills, and increased use of technology and software programs to provide continued educational options to meet students' needs. Additionally, this year, I would like to focus on further development of our supports for students with emotional and behavioral challenges. This will continue to be a significant focus as we move into next school year. So I'm ready to start my review of lines. I believe you all have that in front of you. So line 1, we start off with our resource room at the elementary school. Line 1 has, this is an example of some of the movement that you're going to see throughout this budget. You'll see notes in there that will tell you what has happened. These are not new positions, they're just people moving to different locations. This first one, replaced veteran master's teacher with 5-year master. We have a teacher in the resource room that is retiring, and so we have, again, just budgeted a 5-year that would probably indicate a high benefit line, and that will be reflected in that line as well. Line 3 and 4 are other examples of the movement of the ed techs around the district. So as you can see in line 3, we now have 2 positions, so that's the increase in that line. We had one ed tech that moved from a self-contained to this resource room line. Again, line 4, same thing. So we now have 6, it was 5, and so on. Are there any questions on page 1? Page 2, highlighting line 30 and 32. In each of these sections, you will see a supplies line and a technology software line. The team was conservative in the request for this school year. So you will see a decrease in most of those lines. questions on page 2. I don't have any notes on page 3. It's similar. If you see tuition reimbursement, those are course requests from either teachers or edtechs. Similarly, on page 4, you'll see supplies and technology software. Keeping in the small amount for field trips and hopes that those will start. Page 5, I have line 82. Dr. Jean-Marie Techberg, our Winslow school psychologist, and I are in the beginning stages of collaborating with USM about the possibility of supporting a school psychologist intern in the district. This intern would be able to complete 20 to 30 evaluations for the district, as well as professional development. So I put that as a note in there, if that is not set yet. So if that does not happen, this contract of services is extra support for Jean Marie to complete the many evaluations that she has. You'll also see the supplies 84. These are requested evaluations. The total amount for those evaluations is split between the 3 schools. Line 85, this is an increase as we moved both of the speech and language pathologists to the elementary school, and we contracted for the services of the junior high and the high school. Line 95 is an increase due to need in the district for our contract for ASL.
On that particular line item, is that, you're adding services, is that, do we have that person for a certain number of hours a week, or how does that work?
Yeah, so through the IEP process, we determine how much time the interpreter needs to be in the school building. And so right now, we have 2 that are here for 6 hours a day. So usually full time, but
I do know.
does that answer your question?
So that would be, so the addition is, you're saying we have 2 and 6 hours a day, so the addition would bring us to what?
So the addition, that's an increase of 25,000 on that. For our full year, we're looking at about 50,000, and I also support that with my local entitlement funds. So it's not a full increase to support those positions. I'm just asking for a little bit, because I can't support the whole thing in my local entitlement. Line 109. This, I believe, I'm not sure actually if you have an updated copy, Amanda, or not. My copy still says technology hardware. So I was just gonna highlight that on 109.
We have a hardware and a software line. We have
Okay, so hardware should be 0, and the software will be about 200 for the handwriting without tears. That's not updated.
109 has staff development.
Okay.
No, it's 113 and 114.
Hardware isn't 0.
Every time this gets printed, it changes sometimes, so.
Yes.
But on here, what
The
she's
key is
speaking
the-
of, it's on 113 and
Yeah.
114.
Right, and I'm saying the key is reading the date, the time, making sure we're talking apples.
Right.
So that would have been technology software under occupational therapy,
Okay, that,
114.
that shows up twice, because it's also under 113.
And that's
This-
why I highlighted that. So 113 is technology hardware. That line will be reduced to 0.
Yeah, we'll make that change.
Okay,
And technology software is the line that should be in, so that will stay 200.
thank you, okay.
I just wanted to let you know. Again, all of the rest of the things, of the changes in here, you'll see are just the salaries and supplies and technology software are staying consistent or decreasing. The next line that I had wanted to talk about was so line 333. On this page, you'll also see our tutoring. Those lines are going to stay consistent because we don't know the needs in the district. We are going to keep the tuition to public sources the same as that would be if we had a student that was attending alternative education. 334, we have tuition to private sources. We do have an out-of-district placement this school year. So we are using that line and we'll keep that the same. So that's for an increase in CMC. Line 352 is contracted services for hospital, and that's if we have a student that would need Acadia services, and through their program, they provide some academic assistance during their stay, and we do those for them. 360, technology software, that's for a program called Bluey, which allows us to get documents signed electronically. Similar to DocuSign. Does anybody have any questions? I know there's a lot of, go ahead.
It's not a specific line. I looked at the grand total, $251,000 approximately dollar increase. My question might be unanswerable, but I'm gonna ask it. What does that increase reflect on net gain of positions? Is there any way you can tell us how many positions or how many bodies in addition to the previous year that would it be?
That's no new positions in the budget.
So there's,
Right.
because there was so many changes, it was hard to keep track of what
Right.
one went where and one went. So I thought maybe with that increase, we had gained some.
No. So we have contracted lines that we do contract with people for ASL, for speech and language, things like that, but for district employees. And those lines are staying consistent except for the ASL line, which had an increase.
Is it, but you have a lot of people leaving or people are retiring and then you're budgeting for the highest
Yes.
Is that the jump?
So if we have vacant positions, right now.
Or the high, like the most educated with all benefits, right, is how they budget for the
When we have a
position?
vacant position, we give it a 5-year master's level, and then they give me the rate as if they were to choose the highest level for insurance, which typically I don't think people do.
Benefits highest level.
Insurance, oh, I thought you meant pay as in
No.
years of,
Years of service.
years of education or total,
On the steps.
yeah. No, we don't budget for the 21st step.
No, because they'd all be on the first step, no matter how much education they have.
So I think one of the things that you're seeing in this budget in terms of the increase right now is due to the fact that we have money budgeted in there for negotiations. We are currently budgeting for EdTech's secretaries and cafeteria workers who are all in that EdTech line. When you look at the number of EdTechs that we have, and they're not all special education, but 47 EdTechs in this district.
Makes sense.
So when you look at 47 EdTechs, and you look at the fact that our EdTechs are very much paid less than other EdTechs in the surrounding areas, and in some cases $2 less per hour, you're going to see a significant increase there in order to bring them up to speed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, just to make sure, I mean, typically when we do have an absence in any teaching position, that's what we budget is 5 years master. It's been an average number that we've used for years, sometimes we hire less, sometimes it's lower. But
That makes sense. Yep, thank
that's
you.
the number we've used for quite some time. Seems to work.
I know it doesn't really fit into this budget conversation, but when we go back and look at the larger budget, I'd be interested in the accommodations that are available within iReady. We've talked about it a lot across curriculum. How broad are the accommodations, both for students with disabilities, but also is out-of-level testing available? Has that been normed on out-of-level testing for students that might benefit from that? And I know, you know, the distribution of your supplies across schools, it's not a big deal, but you're not using the waste in the elementary school. You can't. So it's just, I think it could be refined a little bit more to reflect the actual use across buildings. Just a small thing, but, and that's it at this point.
Any other questions on that? And I do have a couple of proposals to go over. The district continues to have an increased need for speech and language services. There have been an increase of 13 students with primary eligibility and speech and language impairment. Last year, I stood in front of you to request additional funds to add 3 days a week contracted service. This year, I'm asking or requesting this be changed from a contracted service to an employee of Winslow, increasing the position to 4 days per week. This allows us to better meet the increased needs of students in the district, allows for increased consultation and programs supporting our students with significant communication needs, and allows for a more consistent delivery of services when you have contracted versus employee. As you can see, we currently have $42,000 budgeted for the contracted service. That's in the budget that you have your runs. An increase to a 4-day employee would increase to the $60,000 mark, a difference of $18,815.09. Again, that is an estimate based on 5 years experience and the highest level of insurance. This may not accurately reflect the applicant that we choose to fill the position. Any questions on that? Okay. The next one I have is for day treatments. For this one, there's still some moving parts as we have students moving in and out of the district, but if things stay on course as they are currently, we have the following need. In order to support the work with our most intensive emotional behavioral needy students in the Tier 3 day treatment setting, we require additional staff supports. I'm requesting 2 additional Edtech 3s be added, one to the junior high day treatment and one to the high school day treatment. As you can see, which probably can't, the highlighted amount is a tech with 5 years experience and taking the maximum insurance. Again, this may not be what we have. I'm going to go down to the next one. Actually, no, stay right there for this. On this slide, we're going to talk about the tiered level supports for supporting students with emotional and behavioral needs, so that these students can be safely and successfully educated in district in the least restrictive environment. So this, my goal would be to reduce out-of-district placements, to return students that are out of district to in-district, increase academic success, allowing students to access education, and reducing the impact on other students' academic progress. Reduce student absences and reduce disciplinary incidents. This work will be supported through outside consultation with the district and our clinical staff. The bottom we can think of as a pyramid. So we have Tier 3 students. They're our most intensive. They require in-school clinical support. We do have classrooms already set up at the elementary, the junior high, and the high school to support these students. Tier 2 are a lower level of care and crisis screening. So these are students that might require brief intervention, working on suspension prevention and behavior analysis. Go ahead.
Just, my question is, approximate number of students affected by what you have on the screen? Round number.
Gosh, so the day treatments, we have, for about 40 for our intensive. And then we also have other lower level supports that require, at the elementary school, we have a lower level intervention for behavior. At the junior high and the high school, that is sort of encompassed with our resource room teachers.
So this affects a lot of students, that was my point.
It does, and I think when you think about the Tier 2, we're seeing an increase in the students that need that short-term interventions. And we also need to sort of be a little bit more creative in how we're handling students' mental health and discipline within the school. We cannot continuously suspend all of our students, especially students with disabilities. There are laws. So just to strengthen that Tier 2 interventions. And then Tier 1 is the bottom of the pyramid, and overall mental health awareness and prevention. So accomplishing that in professional development and social emotional learning.
Did I hear you right that you said 40 students at the Tier 3 level? So 3.5% of our district?
So we have, I think it would be, I have 8, this is my projection for next year. I have 8 at the junior high, I have 21 at the high school, and I believe it's 8 to 9 at the elementary school. I don't have that one in front of me. The next, that slide. At the high school, I would also like to propose to increase the current Edtech 2 that works in that day treatment to an Edtech 3. That's an increase of $1,760.39. This tech is a great fit for the day treatment setting, which can be hard to find.
and will have completed the coursework to be Edtech certified by next fall.
This is not a question that necessarily is for you, it may be for the building administrators, but do we have a TBIS, positive behavioral intervention, system in the general education to reduce the numbers, and we're still at 20 students in the high school who are tier 3? Wow.
Is that a significant increase over the last 2 or 3 years?
It's not as significant.
So it's an increase, but
Okay, and so as you can see, the overall proposed change is estimated at $84,017.07. One thing to consider with this cost is that staff in day treatment settings are able to bill main care if the students they work with qualify for Section 65 services. We do have students that qualify for this level of care that we are not currently billing for, as we don't have Tech 3s.
So it won't be 100% locally funded.
Correct, so we do get some reimbursement back on these, but again, it's not directly reflected in this budget. It would come back as a revenue through care.
Right.
Do you have an idea of the percentage of that should come back? Is it round number, a half, quarter?
If we have these with Section 65 students, then the entire day should be billable for them.
So the majority of it would be
For Section 65, they do have to be Edtech 3 certified. Section 28, we do bill for, and those can be Edtech 1, 2s. But 65 does have to be 3.
I suggest that we have that noted when we do our proposal for a budget. Note that will be offset partially by revenue.
Will that be reflected on the revenue sheet?
We can bill for services for main care for the services they provide, but that's not something that goes back into your budget. It's something that goes into a separate fund that you can use for one-time expenses that can support your budget. It doesn't necessarily support this particular item of your budget. An example of that would be that Jennifer could come to me at some point next year and said, my lines are really overdrawn with speech services and I need to provide 10 more hours a week. That's something that would be a one-time cost for that particular year. We would go to main care because we had been reimbursed that. We could use that for that.
I have just unrelated. Could you talk a little bit about the trauma-informed classroom and training? And I just think it's wonderful. I didn't see that on the budget exactly. Just how will teachers be getting that training and what that looks like?
So some of that comes out of my local entitlement professional development. So some of that would be always reflected in that. But for Edtech Training this year, we did a book study, or we're doing a book study on, it's called Help for Billy, which is written by Heather Forbes, and she also does a Trauma Impact Institute, which our techs have access to as well. It helps them to understand where students are coming from and how to interact, how to create a supportive environment for our students that are challenged with trauma. And so that is something that I did purchase that will be ongoing through next year. So there's a lot to sort of delve into with that. But I feel like it's really important for our staff, especially in special education, to just be aware of that factor when they're working with our kids.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. There's special ed services, so we are now moving on to health services.
Health services is a fairly simple one. In your budget, it's only a 3-page. And essentially what that talks about are the services that are provided in each of the 3 areas, elementary, junior high, and the high school. The major increase in this service is, of course, the raise salaries and benefits. Insurance is also in there. You'll hear this all the time. Insurance is budgeted at 10% because we don't know what our insurance costs will come in as. We'll find out what the insurance cost is in the first week of April. We'll find out what our highest rate is. And then we'll find out what the actual rate is probably in the second week of April. So we can anticipate, hopefully, a decrease in that line at some point in the near future. So when you look at the health services budget, elementary school, pretty straightforward. There are no huge increases there, except for the salaries, since the teachers are in negotiations this year as well. The percent that's there is being negotiated, so it's a placeholder at this particular point in time. The other thing that I should mention here is that we have 3 nurses, 1 nurse for each building. The elementary, the junior high school nurse spends some of her day at the elementary school, now that we have 6th grade there. During the time of COVID, we've been able to hire 2 nurses with COVID funds to help with the nursing, and I'm telling you right now that they've been busy the entire time. It's not been a down moment, and we'll be able to hire them again next year with some COVID funds as well. Any questions on the health budget? Next one I'd like to bring to your attention is alternative ed. It's only a 1-page budget. Alternative education is an opportunity for some of our students who need a different venue or a different approach, so to speak, towards education. We are fortunate to have 5 slots at the alternative ed program in Waterville. How this is calculated is that you take the total cost of the alternative ed program and divide it by the number of students, and we are assessed an amount based on the number of students who are in there. The amount is going up a little bit this year. We're still asking for 5 slots. The amount is increasing because it is my understanding that the alternative ed program does not yet have a facility. The facility that they're in is no longer going to be offering a facility for them next year. So they're in the process of negotiating where they're going to be, and they anticipate an increase in rent. Even at the amount that is budgeted here, you have to keep in mind that we could not provide all of the services that our students receive at the alternative program for this amount of money. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is that these 5 students may drop out of school if they didn't have this program. So that the reimbursement that we get from them, from the state per head, helps to offset these costs. So it's still a really good deal for everybody involved. And it's a tremendous program for the kids. They succeed. Earl is sitting here. He's one of the teachers in that alternative ed program, and he can attest to the success that has had. Questions on alternative ed? The next one is certification. Certification is relatively straightforward as well. It's just a 1-page budget. Certification is to ensure that we have product certification of all staff, and we provide new teachers with mentors. And so this particular page, you'll see that there's elementary school, there's junior high school, and high school. At the elementary school, you have 3 individuals who work in this certification area. At the high school, at the middle school, you have 1, and at the high school, you have 1 as well, Trish Subany, and she is the lead person in this area. She's taken over from Mary Boyle, who used to do who had the lead on this for the last several years. These individuals meet throughout the course of the year several times to make sure that certifications are up to date. It's been very difficult during COVID because we've had a lot of people that we needed who may have not been certified, but they need to be conditioned and certified, and these people help work with the state to make sure that that happens, so we keep our schools open. Small increase in this area as well. Any questions on district certification? Last one I have for you this evening. Sorry, Jim.
Looking at the first section on certification, the 100 section in the elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
if you look over at the 22-23 proposed column, it's only $564.
That is correct. This is based on the percentage of the base, and the person who's doing it is not high on the scale, and so what they receive is lower than somebody else's higher on the scale.
So all of these others are zeroed out. Then how can we say that line 1 is up 5% when it shows 0 on the proposed line? I'm confused.
This is a payroll line that you're looking at. 5% is what's projected for the increase.
But the budget proposed line, the 22-23 proposed, is different than, how is that line different than the budget total line? I guess
So in 21-22, the budget was 2851. The actual cost is 3389 because people were changed. Different people ended up doing that.
Yeah.
And so payroll was calculated 2994 based on who's in there, based on a 5% increase of who's there.
Yeah.
That's where that number came from.
Where does the 0 come from? And where does the 0 come from in the column?
So what happens is you have two columns there. You have a payroll column, you have a proposed column. So the payroll column is generated by payroll. We don't
Okay,
generate that.
All right,
Proposed is if we are buying materials, ordering things.
all right. I'm just spacing out because these columns have been there across the whole budget. And I'm just getting tired at the end of the day. I don't know why. All of a sudden it looked like a problem.
No, it's a good catch, and I'm glad you caught that. There should be something in one of those columns, and if there's nothing in there, we're in trouble. And if there's two things in there, we're in trouble, so it's a good catch.
Charitable, that's charitable.
Anything else on district certification? Okay, that's all we have for this evening. So, Joel,
ELL.
sorry.
Sorry.
ELL, English language learners. What you might be interested in knowing before I talk about this a little bit. We have one student in grade 3. We have 2 students in grade 4. We have 1 student in grade 5, 1 student in grade 7, 1 student in grade 8. The languages that are spoken at home are Arabic, Penobscot, Russian, Spanish, Tagalog, and Ukrainian. We have 1 ELL teacher, and what you see there basically is that 1 individual who's not requesting a lot. There's not a whole lot of changes here for her. Again, the increases because it's in negotiations and we don't know where our insurance costs are, so those are up a little bit higher. As I mentioned before, we hope to see those insurance costs go down. She works in all 3 buildings, the elementary school, junior high school, and the high school. And there are times when we're able to utilize her services in Bassboro because they have students there that she can serve. That's not the case this year. We don't have anybody in Bassboro that she's working with.
She has to speak all those languages? Holy God. I should stand up and applaud.
So that's all that we have, Joel.
That's a standing ovation, that's it.
Okay, any other questions on any of those? And move on?
Right.
Okay, well, that's our first go through of those, so we'll see how it all comes together. All right, so next up, we do have a vote on appointments, because apparently we've hired an Edtech here that we need to vote on, so we'll get that official. So do we have a motion to approve the appointment of Michael Brown to the junior high Edtech student?
So moved. Second.
Motion Jay, we have a second from Earl. Any discussion? All in favor of the appointment? Is unanimous. Thank you. Next up is we have an executive session. So we'll be asking everybody who's not associated with that to leave us. And we will be shutting down the stream as we go to executive session. Our next regular scheduled meeting is March 24th at 6 p.m.